Great. So hello, welcome to Creating a Sustainable Food Economy for a More Resilient Community with April Jones at NOFA New Hampshire's 20th Annual Winter Conference. I'm Laura Andrews, NOFA New Hampshire's Program Coordinator, and I'll be hosting this session with Julie Davidson, NOFA New Hampshire Board Member. Please note that we're recording this session and all sessions throughout the conference. We'll share the recordings with you at the end of the week. Type your questions into the chat box throughout the presentation, and April may pose questions to the audience during the presentation, and you will be able to unmute if you would like to answer verbally instead of typing. So also just please be careful not to accidentally unmute yourself during the presentation. Yeah, so for technical issues, please feel free to communicate publicly through the chat or message me privately here or through NOFA New Hampshire, the NOFA New Hampshire Zoom, that would go to me as well. And then if you would like to access closed captioning, click on the CC icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen, click the arrow next to the icon, and then click Show Subtitle. And if you're watching in a smaller screen, that might be 3 buttons that at the bottom of the screen that says More, or 3 little dots, and then click Show Subtitle. Now, before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that this conference is taking place on the land of the Pennacook tribe, or Endakana, the Abenaki word for the traditional ancestral homeland of the Abenaki and Wabanaki peoples, past and present, and we acknowledge and honor with gratitude the land and waterways and the Alnobac people who have stewarded this land through the generations. And now it's my pleasure to introduce April Jones of Pinehurst Farmers Market.
Hey guys, I'm so excited to have you guys on this call and to be a part of this amazing, beautiful conference. I think it's so important to have, lots of different types of people speaking about their experiences and the opportunities that they've had. So I appreciate you guys all and the solidarity of showing up for this talk. So we're going to talk about the economy of sustainability and steps that you can take to build your community around food. So I'm originally from Akron, Ohio, and I have lived in the Deep South in Columbia, South Carolina for over 15 years. And so I moved to a new neighborhood in downtown Columbia called Pinehurst, and I love the neighborhood. I still enjoy the neighborhood. But it had 2 thriving grocery stores when I moved there. And then over the course of 6 months, both of those grocery stores closed. And so for me, that was so upsetting and just such a shock that 2 grocery stores could close, not just one, at the same time. And there was no discussion with me, not that I'm so important, but like me, a member of the community that lived there. There's no discussion. I talked to my city council people. I talked to the mayor at the time. They all acted as if they had no clue. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but it was just a huge shock to our community, a huge shock to the city, and it made me feel very vulnerable. It was a very vulnerable and sad time. And I thought, how could they just take do they not value me as a person? Like, am I not valuable? Is my community not valuable? Why didn't they talk to us? What is going on? And it was a very vulnerable experience because, as we all know, you have to eat every single day, many times a day, with snacks and water and everything else. And for a corporation to just say, I'm taking away your food that you have to have every day without a discussion, I was like, this is not a good situation. And I, of course, read, like in the New York Times and other publications, about these issues that were happening in like New York and in Chicago. I just didn't think it would happen in Columbia, South Carolina. I was very, very naive in that sense. And so that was the impetus for me to start the Pinehurst Farmers Market. And it was a collective of farmers who were able to come every week to my house and sell their produce, whether it was beef or pork or chicken eggs or beautiful vegetables or microgreens and more. Jams, jellies, soaps. It was a smorgasbord, honey. So we had different farmers that came every week, and it's been a huge growth and a journey. Now, one of the obstacles that I encountered, and as everybody knows, in the food journey, there's going to be some obstacles, was that one of my farmers retired. Another farmer wasn't able to be consistent. Then we had COVID, which was, a huge issue. Then we had Omicron, which was like another huge issue. And so now I've modified the market. It's just me. I'm a woman show, and I'm just doing microgreens and beautiful, delicious eggs that I'm able to get from another farmer. And so for me, it's been a really great reflective time, but also it's shown me as a farmer and as an activist that you always have to make changes. And sometimes those changes may be hard, they may be easy, but we all have to take a step, a breath, reflect, and make modifications. And so for me, having the Pinehurst Farmers Market still in a different format has been empowering, because my customers can come anytime that they're available and pick up their microgreens and pick up their eggs. Now, this format may not work for a lot of people, but I am constantly, at my plot of land, at my house, gardening, working on projects. And so I'm normally at home all the time. And, the eggs are available. I have farmer friends, and that's just like a great sustainable thing. I can support them, they can support me, I can support their customers. And so also with COVID and Omicron, it's a great no contact situation where people can pay you Cash App. You can, leave it in a particular place. They can swing by, pick it up. They don't have to see me. I don't have to see them. There's no fear and thought of, I'm going to give somebody COVID and vice versa. So it's been a really great, sustainable change for the market. But it's been a big change. It's not as interactive, and it's not as social, and it's a different format. And so I encourage you to all think about your product, think about what you're growing, think about the work that you're doing, and make sure that you are taking the opportunity to take a pause, to take a breath, and to reflect, and to think about the way that you're doing things. And is this really the best way to do this? Or is there a modification that I can make to make my customers happier, or to make my community more actively engaged and more involved, or that would make my life easier? And so I just really encourage you guys to take that extra step. And especially with, dealing with the pandemic, we have all been through so much, and there's things that are always changing, right? The recommendations are changing, our state regulations are changing, our county regulations, city regulations. So we all have to really work and be more flexible, and communicate that with our customers. So I'm going to take a pause, and if you feel led, you don't have to. I would love for you to just maybe type in the chat, or you can unmute and just, you can say your farm, and what product that you are working on, your dream project, or the project that you are doing, what you're selling. So I can really craft this talk for this particular audience, to give you guys some tips, tricks, and strategies. Would anybody like to share in the chat?
I have a question.
Yes.
How did you get started? I mean, how did you go to the community? Did you set up a booth? How did you get started?
So for me in particular, I've been involved in sustainability since I was a very little girl. So my grandmother is from Milledgeville, Georgia, and she's part of the Great Migration of African Americans from the Deep South to the North. So she and her family left Milledgeville, Georgia, and they were farmers there. And then they arrived in Akron, Ohio. And then my grandfather on my mom's side is from Oglethorpe, Georgia. And him and his family migrated all the way up to Akron, Ohio. And so then she married my grandfather and they had 8 children, which was normal during that time. And she was basically like a homesteader. Like my grandfather grew grapes and he made homemade wine. And my grandmother had, a 1/4 of an acre and they had chickens and she would kill the chickens and she used the chicken eggs. And she had corn and potatoes and really grew out food for her family. And then she would can all of that harvest for her family to supplement, the grocery store. And so that was like a deep abiding part of my childhood and my connection with my grandmother. She was a fabulous cook. And so I loved her garden. I just loved it all. I thought it was all just so magical and wonderful. And so when I came to the Pinehurst neighborhood, I had that familial history of knowing that you could plant a seed and grow something and be able to feed yourself. And so that was really the impetus of the farmers market. It also was a collision of many events. One, I was in South Carolina, which has a lot of access to farmland. The farmland is not far from the cities. They have, trucks that just have produce on them. They sell on the side of the road. That's something that's very, very cultural here. And so when I started a farmers market, people were used to that sort of communal access to farm food, farm fresh items, I should say. And so that was really the start of the farmers market. I also think that, you see a problem in your community, sometimes it can be so overwhelming. And so you think, this is bigger than me. There's no way I can do anything. I'm just like victimized, right? And I think there's so many instances in our society now where we all feel victimized. We all feel like, I don't really have control over this really big problem. And I just feel helpless. And so for me, this was an awesome opportunity to take the bull by the horns and to take an issue that I felt confident in myself that I could handle and I could work. Maybe not for the whole country, but definitely for my small neighborhood, which is about 5 blocks. I felt like I definitely could make a difference. And so I think that is the huge key, is that you have to take baby steps and you have to take them one by one and move towards a goal. And it's not all going to happen at one time, but it will happen over the course of time. So I'm going to look. Okay, so someone mentioned they have a CSA and they're looking for community ideas. And then SNAP grant monies and veggies donated. So I think CSAs are such an awesome, fabulous proposition. It's great for the farmer. They get upfront money. And then it's also great for the community because they get the amazing, fabulous produce. And so I think the key thing about CSAs is you really want to create that sense of community. And so when you're thinking about creating a sense of community, you want to think about your customers as holistic beings, right? And sometimes we just think of like, this is Sue, she's my customer, and she loves eggs. But you could also think about like recipes that Sue would like. And then you could also talk about Sue's grandchildren or Sue's husband or Sue's sister or her nieces and nephews and siblings. And so when you think about your customers, think about them in holistic beings that are interconnected, as everybody knows, to other people who they love and they value and they cherish. And you want to make sure that you are connecting with Sue, but also talking about the people that she loves and values and cherishes. And think about Sue as an opportunity to connect to her network, right? So we're all independent beings moving around in the world, but we all have deep abiding connections in our community, whether it's at your church or your sorority or your knitting club or your garden club, or, you know, the list goes on. And so when you're able to get people who are connected to those different networks, you're able to increase the amount of people that you're able to reach. And so I think you should really think about that in a key sense. Another thing I would say for CSA and any farmer is that think of yourself not quite like a billboard, but think of yourself as a billboard, kind of like people, when they see you, you want them to think of whatever product that you have. You know, you want them to think of your amazing honey. And in the wintertime, you want them to think of, oh, I want your honey and my tea and the comfort and the warmth of that. And so really making those connections. And so like when I was starting out the Pinehurst Farmers Market, I told every single person I knew about the Pinehurst Farmers Market. And I'll tell you a funny story. So this is our prior Mayor Benjamin. And I would just see him out everywhere, right? At political events, mostly political events, but just out and about. And every time I saw him, I said, oh, hey, it's good to see you, yada, yada, yada. This is a problem I have in my community. And have you been to the Pinehurst Farmers Market? And so I did that to so many people in my community. Some people really got tired of it. So the mayor said, I'm tired of you talking about that Pinehurst Farmers Market. But next time I saw him, I said, hi, so good to see you. Here's my problem. And I haven't seen you at the Pinehurst Farmers Market. So don't be deterred if people reject you. That is bound to happen, but you're really helping your community, right? Because you have a fabulous product that is going to benefit them and it's going to make them stronger and have better skin and look better and feel better and be better. And so you really are helping your community by sharing about the wonderful things that you have to share with your community. So another person said, how are you having people pay? So one person said SNAP, and then another person said the different ways that you can do payment. So one thing that I would say is that SNAP is a great thing. And anytime you can, encourage that, I would definitely encourage you to do that. The only downside of SNAP is that it's very structured. You have to normally go to a class, and then sometimes you have to get a card reader, and there's a cost with a card reader. And then you have to think about your community. Do you have a lot of people who are using SNAP? Are they going to benefit SNAP? Are there extra dollars that are going to add to their budget? And so for me, as a small farmers market, I never did SNAP because one, it took so much time and effort to invest in the infrastructure, to go to the class, to get the SNAP reader, to get trained on the SNAP reader. And so what I did was I was able to get funding from donations, from businesses. And then when there was a person who was needy, or they said, oh, I really want those strawberries. But unfortunately today, I don't have strawberry budget. My strawberries are not in my budget. I could just easily say, no problem. This is on the house. This is part of funding that we've received, and we're just showing solidarity to you. And so it was a very seamless process. There was no guilt. There was no shame. They were helping me out because this is their community giving back to them, and they were happy to receive it. And then I didn't have to pay the farmer right away. They wrote it down, and at the end of the day, they came to me, I paid them. It was a seamless transaction. So that's one thing that I would encourage you to do. That empowers your community because they want to support your work, right? But they don't quite know how. And so that's a great way for them to support your work. It's a great way for you to partner with them and build that relationship. And it's a great way for you to support your community and show solidarity. I think the key thing is when you are doing any of these initiatives is to think of that we're all vulnerable little creatures and human beings. Some people have more money, some people have less, but it's really not about the money. It's about I'm vulnerable, you're vulnerable, and I'm honoring you and respecting you in this vulnerable time. Because you may be vulnerable today, but I may be vulnerable tomorrow. And so this is really a reciprocal relationship. I'm investing in you because I know when I have trouble, whether it's maybe just a bad day and maybe you're available to hear my sad, sad story, that you're going to be able to reciprocate. And so think of it in those sort of terms of relationship building and showing solidarity. And I think that is such an important word. It's very French. And I support it. I think it's about being there for the other person and showing that we're all part of the same community and the same collective. So that's really, really important. So you can do that from grant money, you can do that from donations, things of that nature. Also, I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but we also did solidarity boxes, which was the same concept, but we just took things from the farmers market, put them in a box and deliver them to people in the community. And that was really important, especially during COVID, because people were not able to get to the grocery stores. They were not getting out. This was more like at the beginning of COVID. And it was a great way to show solidarity, to show a sense of community, and to show that we're all in this together.
April, Julie had a good question, which is what's the community response to local food where you live? And is there big support for local farms?
Yeah, I think that, it's an ebb and it's an ebb and a flow. And I think that is definitely part of being in sustainability, where people are into eating healthy and then they get off the wagon. And then they get back into eating healthy and then they get off the wagon. But something that I think is really important that we all can be part of the conversation and the dialogue about is that the food chain, the food supply chain. I think I said it right. Yes. Huge issue. And we are all feeling it, right? If you go into your grocery store, the prices are astronomical. It should be illegal, the prices that they are selling for food in this country at the grocery store. And it's really heartbreaking because people are not able to buy all of the food they need for their families. And so I think it's really just an opportune conversation to talk about food access, food justice, and food sovereignty. And so thinking of it in terms of your state, right? It starts at home. Thinking of my state, what does my state have that can supply food for my people in my state, right? And promoting that, promoting those crops like crazy. So here in the South, we have lots of like collard greens, sweet potatoes, butternut squash, turnips, radishes, things of that nature. And then Ohio, we had lots and lots of potatoes, right? Lots of corn. So each state is very, very different, but it's important to highlight those crops, highlight those people, and highlight those farmers. And I think that is part of the work that needs to be done in the food movement, because each state is different and each state has different values and different culture and different ways of making that particular vegetable into something delicious and amazing. And the more that we can create through our states, through our counties, through our cities, food sustainability, the better we all are, right? the less that we all have to just rush to the grocery store, the more resilient, the better looking we're all going to be, and way, way stronger based on our food access. And so I think that's so, so important. And I really feel like that's the next step and the movement, because everybody's feeling it. Before, I mean, I've been talking to my family personally about like this exact issue. Like, don't go to the grocery store so much. Like, try to grow some stuff and see and find a farmer, make a friend. And they just poo-hooed me. They're like, no, I'm not listening to you. But now they're like, oh, do I have farmers in my area? Can you research? What can I grow at home? And so it's just people are desperate. They're ready for this new information. And I also think that you guys can think about yourselves as, ambassadors, right? You're ambassadors to your city, you're ambassadors to your county, you're ambassadors to your state based on the food. People are desperate. They need your help and they're willing to be a part. And I think it's just really important for us to be firm about the things that we want. So we want more funding from our cities. Can you swing some funding my way to create some food sovereignty, to create some food resilience, so we're not in a bad situation in our city, right? Maybe the next door neighbor city, they're going to be in trouble, but we're going to be good because we're thinking ahead and we're planning. And think about your state. What can your state do? What can legislators do for you as a farmer? So in Illinois, the lieutenant governor has a new program about agriculture and just promoting agriculture, promoting the farmers, promoting partnerships. And so I personally believe every state should be doing this. They should be promoting their farmers, promoting what they have to offer and making these connections. And so saying to your legislature, what monies can you swing my way in my community for my budget? And then, Department of Agriculture, that's a big beast, but you can always, if you know somebody there, have them swing money your way. I think that's really important. And starting those conversations. You think that your city council person is like not interested and doesn't care. And maybe that's true. Okay, maybe it's true. But you have a wonderful opportunity to start the conversation with them about caring, right? About how this benefits the community, how this is an election issue. In Columbia, before I started the farmers market, people weren't talking about food access. They weren't really talking about ways that people were getting food if they were in a food apartheid area, how food impacted, our communities. And so this election, I'm happy to say, it was on the ballot. People were talking about it. It was an issue that people cared about. And all the politicians talked about it. And so that was a huge move for little Columbia, South Carolina, a huge, huge move in a positive direction. And so, just getting people to start thinking about these big picture questions, big picture issues is really important. So another person asked about how you can reach out to younger children and to explain how they are able to get their food. And so for that, I would say that you can be a consultant. That's what I would say at your local school. I would say start that partnership and see what they can do, whether it's getting funding from a business to support that garden and support your time and your effort. I would take that first step, and it doesn't have to be every week. It could be once a month. It could be whatever you want it to be. But I say that's a great opportunity to partner with the school if you have a farm. You can see if they can maybe do like a snack at the garden, right? When they're doing the workshop, a snack after school or during the school day, they can pay you for the snack. They can pay you to consult. And then you're able to build that relationship with students who have mothers and fathers and aunts and uncles and cousins who also will know about growing and about your farm and the opportunities there. So that is something that I would definitely encourage you to do. Another thing is, you can give out samples at your farmer's market. And you can also do the social media and share recipes, right? Recipes that are kid friendly regarding items that you have to sell as a farmer. Another person asked, if a person does not have money, like you have a berry crop, the person doesn't have money, how can you, give the berries and for them to give back? I always say that people should definitely think creatively. We don't always have to have money to do an exchange, right? People have talents and abilities and skill sets that they can help you out. And then you have berries or other items that you can help them out, whether it is maybe a person's a photographer, or they can do social media for you, or they can glean for you, they can harvest the crops for you. I mean, there's just so many ways. Maybe they have a record that you really want and you can exchange your record. I mean, there's just so many ways that you can creatively think about exchanging with others without actually using money. And so I would just say use your creativity there, but make sure it's a fair exchange. Don't discount those berries just because you're not getting cash. Make sure it's something that, you value highly and that they value as well. And so it's a fair exchange. So one person said about, they really like the idea of focusing on relationships and opposed to marketing. And I wanted to expound upon that idea. I love marketing, and I do encourage you to read marketing books as well. I'm really into marketing and economics, and it's not that sexy or exciting, but I really like it. It's a nice little hobby. And I also think that, if you're not interested in reading marketing books or psychology books or economic books, I would encourage you to just think about the ads that you see on TV if you watch TV. So if you think about a Coke, you have all these emotions and memories and thoughts that they've spent billions of dollars over the years to make us all think that. But if you think about what's actually the substance inside of a Coke, yeah, it's not so great, right? It's corn syrup, not even sugar, corn syrup. And then it's dyes, and then water, carbonation, maybe some natural flavoring, etc. So the value that you're getting when you get the Coke is not really that great. But they've invested a lot of money, time, and effort into the marketing of that Coke. You think you get the Coke, your life's going to change. It's going to taste amazing. Something wonderful is going to happen. You have all these fond memories of maybe you used to go to the beach and then you'd have a rum and Coke at the beach with the water, right? You have all these memories with that particular Coke. And so when you're thinking about marketing or building relationships with your customers, you want them to have the same sort of memories, whether it's marketing things around the holidays, whether it's Christmas or Easter or Valentine's Day is coming up, right? And Valentine's Day, everybody just thinks about romantic love, but love has so many aspects, like a mother's love. I'm a mother, a mother's love, right? There's nothing like a mother's love, or your grandmother's love, or your grandfather's love, or your aunt who loves you, or your cousin who you're like thick as thieves, they know you're mine, or your best girlfriend or your best guy friend. I mean, there's just so many types of love. And so when we think about Valentine's Day, I would really encourage you to think outside the box, not just think like, oh, kissy, kissy love. Just think about ways that you can celebrate love with your customers and all the different ways that they experience love. Because sometimes if you're single and it's Valentine's Day, you may feel like sad, like, oh no, or you're widowed and you feel like, oh no, my love is not with me anymore. So just give people an opportunity to express their love in creative ways. And then every Valentine's Day, they will think of your market, of your farm, and have those really fond memories. I think the key thing is with food, there's always a memory associated, right? We all have these experiences of like our favorite dish or our favorite honey or our favorite jam or our favorite um type of wine, or I mean there's just so many things, and it evokes memories, right? Takes you back to your childhood or when you're a teenager, or just so many good memories. And so thinking about ways that you can evoke these fond memories relating to food is really important. And I also think it's important to think about your culture. That's another huge component of, the economic system, where we all have a culture in our states, in our counties, in our cities, in our country, right? We have these values. Some of them are spoken, some of them are unspoken, right? So, I give this example. I'm from Akron, Ohio, and I don't know if it's like this where you are, but we're very frugal in Ohio, right? Just tight, tight, tight with the money. And that is a value that is extremely high, right? A value that we espouse and we say, this is great and this is wonderful. And so if I sell a product in Ohio, people are going to say, how much is it? How much do I get? How large or how small is this? And is it a good value? Or are you trying to take advantage of me? Right? But if I come to Columbia, South Carolina, people are free with the money, just free as a bird. They're just like, the money comes and the money goes, and then more money is supposed to come. And if it doesn't, oh no. And they're more about their emotions. Like, how does this item make me feel emotionally? Do I have good memories with this item? Do I know how to cook this item? Those kind of things. And so it's a whole different concept. They're not quite as price sensitive, but they're more emotionally sensitive about the buying process. And so you really have to think about your community. What are the values that you... So I'm back. Sorry about that. My cell phone is low. So that's what I to do. And so I wanted to talk briefly about some books that I recommend. When we're thinking about spoken and unspoken values, I really like the book Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. It talks about the racial system in our country and how it's systematic and structured. And so I think that that is a really great way of revealing and thinking deeply, one, about race in our country, but also applying it to your farmer's market or your farm about the spoken and unspoken values of your community. And so when you really think deeply about the spoken and unspoken values, you're able to, one, get over barriers with your customers, and two, see pricing and marketing in a new light, because you're able to structure it around the values of your community. And a lot of times the unspoken values of our communities are really driving forces, right? That we're not consciously thinking about every single day. And those are drivers of our customer behavior, our customer retention, ways that we can communicate and reach out to our customers. So that's a really important thing to think about. Another book that I recommend is The Power of Habit, because we all have our habits every single day. And sometimes we're building bad habits, and sometimes you want to build new habits. And so that helps you to think about how you can create perpetual cycles of good habits for your customers. I think that's really, really important. Another book that I recommend is the 1619 Project. That talks about the founding of our country, and it reframes it in a new way, right? And I think that we all have to think about our cities, our counties, and our states, and think about our cultural history, the way we do things, why we do things, and how we can reframe issues in our community. So one way of like reframing would be food access. And like we talked about, doing the solidarity boxes. And so instead of thinking, oh, it's like a pity box and they need me and I'm wonderful, and you know, it's not reciprocal, reframing it and saying that they may need help today, but I may need help tomorrow. And this is helping all of us because this affects all of us. And I think during the pandemic, we have seen how important every single member of our community is, whether it's the person who works at the gas station, who is there and exposed to a lot of people, and is sacrificing for the communal good so we can all have gas in our cars, so we can drive to work and go on our daily routines, or it's the grocery store worker, or it's the doctor or the nurse who's caring for people who may not be feeling their very best at that time. And every single person in that worker economy is so important to our overall good. And so just thinking about how we can reframe things for our customers and for our community, so that everybody's healthier and stronger. And one other book I would recommend is How to Be a People, Know How to Connect with Anyone, How to Instantly Connect with Anyone. It's by Leo Lowndes. And she also has the book How to Talk to Anyone. And so I really like her books. Sometimes they may not be at the library because they are kind of older, but you can always get them online or at a used bookstore. And I like her because she's easy to read, she's informative, she's funny, and she gives you really great tips that aren't preachy about how to connect with people and how to relate with people. And I think that's important. Those skills are so dying right now. One, generationally, I always feel like my mother and my grandmother had better social skills. Of course, they had more children in their families, right? So my grandmother had 6, and then she had 8 children, and then my mom just had 1. And so they had so many more opportunities to interact and to socialize and to use those social skills, where I just had me and my mother and my aunt, and not the same. So I think we all have to build on our social skills, and especially during the pandemic, because we haven't had an opportunity to like see people and interact. And, you know, that's been a detriment to everyone and all of our social skills. So I'm going to conclude my talk now. And if anyone else has any questions or comments, I'd be happy to answer them.
April, I think I saw one question that I don't believe you touched on, but someone asked if you had connected your customers not only with fresh veggies, but also with a way to learn how to freeze or preserve them and like save them into the winter season.
So I mostly have shared recipes. So I'm also a recipe developer. So I would share recipes that I made and posted on, you know, Instagram, Facebook, social media. And then also I would promote other recipes that I was able to research and find online. And then I would post those as well on social media. I think that it's really important to give people the tools to be able to create their own dish. And, you know, life is rough. People have a lot going on in their lives, and they don't necessarily have time to buy the beet, come home, research beet recipes, and then make the beets. So if you preload your customers with beet recipes before, like 10 beet recipes, 2 beet recipes, 3 beet recipes, whatever time you have, they can pick the beet recipe that they like, right? Then they have the autonomy, the power. Then they come, they get the beets. They already have the recipe that they've picked and that they like, and then they go home and they make those beets. I haven't done so much with preserving because we were a small market and we didn't quite have enough for people to necessarily buy in bulk. But I always encourage my, when I'm consulting with clients, my farmers, to always think of ways that you can upsell. So making a jam, making jellies, those are great ways to preserve berries. And you can freeze. A lot of people are doing freeze dried and, dried out food. So beef jerkies, and you can do fresh fruits. That's a great way to preserve. So if there's ways that you can preserve your crop and then resell it at a higher price, that's even better, because you can sell berries for so much. But berry jam is a whole new ball game, and people will pay a lot. I mean, $10, $15, depending on your market, $5, depending on your market. I mean, I love jam. And if it's really good jam, I'll shell out the money, because it's like, once in a lifetime. And, you don't use that much jam per use. And I just always think it's worth it. So I always encourage you to upsell. And I think that Lil has another book called Upselling, which is very good.
Thank you. What are your plans for this season, the upcoming season? Are you sticking with microgreens and eggs, or?
Yeah, so I'm going to stick with the microgreens and eggs. I'm not sure what I'm in the heat of summer in South Carolina. With the global warming, it's unbelievable. I mean, 100-degree temperatures, not much rain. It's just brutal. And every year I think, oh no, it's going to be better every year. And every year it's worse. And the winter's been so mild. We had one little snow, and then right now it's like probably 60 degrees. And I think it's warming up. I think it may be getting warmer every day.
Wow.
So it's going to be a really hot summer. So I'm not sure what I'm going to be able to grow in the heat of the summer. I also have a water access issue on that land. And so it's just really tricky. But for now, the winter and the spring, I'll be able to definitely do lots and lots of microgreens and eggs.
Great. So your growing season's on a different schedule from ours.
Yes. Basically, you can grow a lot year round, except the heat of the summer. And now people are having to put up shade cloth. And I don't know. I mean, the summer really bad. And then if it doesn't get cold enough, then the little predators, they're not really predators, but I call them predators, your insects, they just are ready to go, just ready to eat something. And then they're just ferocious because they didn't get a chance to die out. They've just been hanging out all year.
Yeah.
So the ants are really horrible, but I don't want to be negative. I mean, maybe it'll be cool, but it's not looking like it.
Okay. I don't know if do you have access to the chat now?
Yeah, I do.
Okay,
I
great.
think it's important to talk about climate change and how it is impacting our ability to grow. And I think it's important to share with your clients about that. And you can do it in a lot of different ways. You can say, maybe this pricing is a little higher because I was only able to grow smaller quantities because it's so warm now, or my growing season has changed. It's shorter because of climate change. And I think that you really have to let the customer know, educate them, and know that there may be less and the prices may be higher because there's less that I have for everyone. I think that's important to talk and share with your customer for sure. And also, I think, you don't always have to do social media, right? I think people love social media. I love social media. I love Facebook and I love Instagram. I'm totally sometimes addicted. I'm trying to get off being on it so much. But I think, people are they really looking for Instagram or Facebook? Or are people really looking for real relationships, right? So if you feel like you don't want to do social media, I encourage you to invest in the real relationships. And those are what we had back in the day, right? with your elementary school teacher, with your pastor, with people in your community, right? Little old lady on your street who could look at you and say, what have you been up to? And it's time to go home. And, like, I'm gonna have to talk to your mother, which is just like the kiss of death. So I think it's about building those relationships in positive ways. I would not encourage you to maybe say things to children now because they're not the same as they used to be. But you can talk about, your experience as a parent. I'm a parent and it's rough out there. We don't have like grandparents nearby. We don't always have family. And so if we have women or men in our community who can say, well, when my little son was little, I really loved this bedtime routine. It worked for him. It was very successful. I think parents would be so willing to hear that information, as long as it's not coming from like a place of judgment, but just sharing our stories. We all have stories that are so untold in our country. And we all have knowledge that we are not sharing with our neighbors. And it doesn't have to be like sad stories. It doesn't have to be all happy stories, but it could be, I've experienced this, and this is something that really helped me get through it. Or this is a technique or a tool that I use that's been really, really successful. And just sharing these stories with our customers, then they can feel empowered to share their stories because they have interesting lives too, and they have stories that they want to share. And so just think about building those really deep, robust communities. And I think, I grew up in Akron, Ohio, and we had so many clubs. We had the Italian club, the Polish club, the Czech club. I mean, so many different clubs based on your nationality, bowling clubs, chess clubs, choral groups. And those people came weekly together around a cause, shared stories, had, an activity, and that created such a great community in Akron, Ohio. People were cohesive, they were interconnected. And so if you think back to those kind of times and social clubs and what they did for connectivity and relationships, you can build that same thing. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that we really had a more robust and dynamic social network, and we can still do it today. So another person said that microgreens and eggs are very expensive. You don't understand how my customers can afford these items. And growing vegetables, things like that. So yeah, so I have a competitive pricing on my microgreens, and I think that it's beneficial. And then the eggs aren't that expensive. They're around the market price for South Carolina. But I think that, it's important to make people pay for items, right? People pay $2, $3 for a Coke. And I think it's important for them to pay a good price for vegetables that actually have nutrients and value and that are going to increase their vitality and their life. And I am not about lowering prices just because people don't have that understanding and that concept. And so I've done a lot of work about food access, educating my customers about the benefits. I write about the benefits. I talk about the benefits. When I see people, they say, oh, you look so great. And I say, oh, yes, I eat my microgreens, right? It's not about me. It's all about the microgreens. It's all about the eggs and the fabulous farmers who show solidarity and allow me the privilege to purchase from them, whether it's beef or it's pork or it's lamb or, things of that nature, right? They're showing me such solidarity. I'm thankful for them. And I talk about it. And so I think it's important when we as people in sustainability, we have to feel the power and be empowered and price accordingly, because Coke is pricing accordingly. McDonald's is pricing accordingly. Burger King, Chick-fil-A, have you seen the Chick-fil-A lines? Crazy, pricing accordingly. And we have such an amazing, way better product. And we have to price accordingly because people will pay. They are paying. and you have to live a livable wage. I think that we in the sustainability movement, we say we're about a livable wage, but we also have to be about a livable wage for our farmers and have that conversation. It's a little awkward, and people may feel like you're being a little aggressive, and you can phrase it how you feel would be most received in a great way in your community. But I think we really have to be empowered to talk about everybody deserves a livable wage, and our farmers especially deserve a livable wage, right? They should be able to feed their families, pay their bills, and have money in the bank extra, right? And if we don't have that, we have to really have those conversations with our community members and convert them one by one, and have those conversations with our city council people and our county council people and our legislatures, right? That's where the power lies in our states. And if those people are not aligning with those values, sometimes you have to find other people to take their place. But we don't have to talk about that now. We're just going to keep it light and open. But I think we have to have the conversations. And I think once people have the conversations, they definitely can get the idea and run with it.
Great, thank you, April. I think that now is a good time to wrap up, if it's okay with you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure. I'm really hopeful that you guys have taken like one little bit from the talk and you feel empowered to, just make some small changes. And I appreciate you. I just want to say I appreciate you so much for the work that you guys are doing, and just keep up the good work.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us all the way from South Carolina. We appreciate it. And thank you everyone for being here today. Our next session starts at 4:30, and that is co-creating an equitable regional food system that benefits us all, which is a panel discussion. And I'm going to pop links in the chat here. In the meantime, you can also check out our virtual exhibitor fair. We have a lot of different exhibitors and a winter conference bookstore hosted by Main Street Bookends. You can order any books through Main Street Bookends and enter NOFA-NH in the comments, and 20% of proceeds will be donated back to NOFA New Hampshire. And just another reminder to mark your calendars for our upcoming programs. Popping links in the chat. There we go. On February 17th, we have NOFA New Hampshire's Farm Bill listening session. We have our Feeding the Family Organic Gardening series, 6 different workshops every other week from February 22nd to May 3rd. And also our bulk order program. You can save on farming and gardening supplies when you order through NOFA New Hampshire. Order by February 28th and pick up on March 19th and 20th in Andover, New Hampshire, Ware, and Rochester. And thank you again for joining us.